is what we want to talk about. And so if you'll bear with me while I share my screen. And if you'll also bear with me, my wife Amy's in the other room and she's usually my volume control. Because of my generation, and I realize how far away you are, I tend to shout at the screen like somehow because there's more distance, you need me to be louder. So control your volume as you need to as we go. As we think about goals, I just checked yesterday on Amazon, and right now Amazon has more than 50,000 book titles that connect to goals. There are probably at least that many websites that apply to goals and goal setting. I tell you that because the topic of goals is such a vast idea. It's so wide in scope. You look at the people that are here visiting today, listening in with us, we come from really a diverse set of backgrounds and a diverse set of careers, because goal setting connects to so many people in its scope, both professionally and personally. And then also I think, goal setting and goals are a huge topic because really every study that's ever been done scientifically on that sees a direct correlation between goal setting and what those books are about, but also it's all about, it matches your success and your achievement and your fulfillment. And so I think everybody recognizes those connections, and we've been here for those types of things. There are people that like to sort out very carefully the definition between goals and dreams. I'm a dream big person, and I encourage you for that. One of my favorite authors ever is Richard Bach, and that's one of my favorite quotes. We're never given a dream without the power to make it come true. You may have to work for it, however. And so let's worry less today about sorting out what technically is a goal versus technically is a dream. And let's just think about, what do we want and how do we get what we want? And so there's such a huge, body of information out there about goals. So the question is, why don't some people set goals? If there's that much information and that scientific data that shows how they connect to success and fulfillment and achievement, why don't we set them? Well, I think the ones we immediately come to mind are, not having the knowledge to do that, obstacles get in the way, I've got higher priorities, I'm afraid of failing. But this is really the one I want to address today, is this point. I'm too busy. I've got a huge to-do list, and I've got a lot of things to check off, and it starts first thing in the morning and it runs pretty close to the time I go to bed. I don't have the time. I'm just too busy to think about goals and setting goals. And that reminds me of this story that you probably heard, but there's a man driving along the street and he stops at a stoplight, and he sees a friend of his on the sidewalk who's pushing a bicycle frantically down the sidewalk, just pushing as fast as he can push it. And so he rolls down the window and he says to his friend, what are you doing? Why aren't you riding your bicycle? Why are you pushing it? And his friend says, oh, I'm way too busy to get on. And I think that's where we are sometimes. I think we have a bicycle, but we're so overwhelmed by our to-do list, by how busy we are, that we don't take the simple step of getting on in preparation when it could take us much farther than us pushing the bicycle. And so I'm going to suggest that goal setting takes some intentional and thoughtful time. And I'm also going to suggest, though, that here you are. You've committed that today, and I really appreciate that. So you're here this morning. That's some intentional and thoughtful time. I would love it if you would think and process the things that we talk about. What does this look like in my world at work? But at the same time, what does this look like in my world outside of work, in my whole life as we go? So let's get on the goals bike. Let's take a second to climb on. And thank you for doing that this morning. And let's take a look at it. So again, we've got 50,000 books on goals. There are lots of things you can read, and you probably studied it. And if you've taken any business courses, that's all been incorporated. What I'd like to share with you this morning are maybe some things you haven't thought about that might not be in 47,000 of the 50,000 books there. And so here's where I'd like to go today. What goals do I set? What actions do I take? And then how do I keep going? So one of things I'd like to do is show you, we'll go 3 points ahead of time, but also share with you that I want to give you some ideas, but I'll also do my best to give you some specific examples. Some people that I've worked with, some businesses that I've worked with, some people like Matthew that I've coached that have taught me a lot about goal setting and how that works. So start with point 1. Your goals must come from the right place, the place of highest importance. And I think that can be a challenge for us sometimes because we don't take the intentional, thoughtful time to think about what is our place of highest importance. Raise your hand, though I can't see you all. How many of you work at a place that has a mission statement? Yeah, absolutely. At some point, the data came out and showed people that if your work has a mission statement, that it helps keep everybody focused and directed and gives you a statement of philosophy and foundation to fall back on. How many of you, you don't have to raise your hands on this, and those of you that are not on camera, good idea. How many of you know you have a mission statement, but you couldn't tell us what it is offhand without going to the website and looking at it? Or texting Cindy, I know we have a mission statement. What is it? And I think that's really, really common. Places of work, businesses and organizations of all kind create a mission statement, which is a really, really good idea. And then they post it someplace, typically on a website, sometimes even on the wall. I was in a tire store a couple months ago and they had their mission statement on the wall. But I think at that point, it's like, okay, that was a checklist item, and now we have a mission statement. So now we can go back to our to-do list and just doing what we do every day, which is probably dealing with the most urgent things or most urgent people that get our attention. And so the mission statement just kind of hangs there, but very, very few people use it. I'm going to suggest that wherever you work, that has a mission statement. If you don't have one, it has to have one because the goals have to start from your mission statement. But second, I'm going to suggest that if you or anyone you work with can't recite the mission statement, then you don't really have one. It's only a mission statement if it truly becomes a part of your mission. I laughed for a second at that tire store. That was a number of months ago, deep in the pandemic, and the tire store is not in Columbus, so I can tell you the story, but they had their mission statement on the wall, but yet they were not at all concerned about people wearing masks while they were in this place of business. I was concerned. And part of the mission statement said, and we vow to take care of our customers first and foremost. And so when I wrote my email of complaint, I quoted from their mission statement on there, but I'm going to suggest that probably nobody that works there was thinking about the mission statement that day. So as you set goals, it's about having a mission statement, but you need to know it and be able to say it and be able to use it every day. The second thing that, as you sort out how do my goals come from a place of highest importance for me, would be your organization's core values. I'm going to say the same thing about those. Many organizations have spelled out clearly what their core values are, but can you list them for us? Could you name 3 off the top of your head? Could you talk about what you're doing today and how that connects to the core values? And I hope the answers are yes. These are all rhetorical questions that I'm asking. Zoom questions, I think they might be called in the future, where you're not expecting a direct answer. But those are only of value, and you can only set goals if you know what your mission and your core values are to start with. One of the things I think about when I think of terms of core values is I was working individually with a gentleman, and he was on a board of directors, and they were dealing with a very serious issue, and he was somewhat intimidated because he was younger than the other people on the board, and there was some, what he felt like, political pressure for him to decide a certain way. But we had done an exercise in core values and spent some time with that. And when he connected with me later, he said, it made my life a lot easier because the outside influences kind of faded away, because I went back and took a look at what I've listed as my core values, and I was able to make my decision and put my vote in based on those core values. And again, I think that's how it also works with goals. You need to recognize your mission, but remind yourself of it every day. You need to have identified your core values so that the goals come not as insignificant pieces of your life, but become significant toward you growing and your business growing to what you want it to be. And so if you haven't had a chance to work on those two things, I'd encourage you to take that time. It's valuable. If you've done it and haven't revisited, I encourage you to revisit those types of things. Another thing that allows you, and I think this is really valuable in terms of your goals, is to be more self-aware. I worked with the leader of an organization, and he was talking to me. He was really upset because he'd done that scary leader thing. He'd given out a survey to his employees on how he was doing. And it sounds like a good idea. And then you get the results back, and he didn't like what they'd had to say because he didn't necessarily agree with them. And he said to me, he said, they want me to motivate them. He said, at the start of every day, that's what I do. They hear my voice, I tell them something motivating, and I go from there. And he said, and yet they mark me down because they want me to come and see them work, and they want to see my face out among them. And he said, I don't see why that's important. I'm doing my motivating at the beginning of the day. Why is that important? Well, one of the things that core values helps us with is self-understanding, to realize then what we're like, but also that not everybody we work with is like us. And it was a real aha moment for him when he realized, oh, just because I'm motivated by a voice at the beginning of the day that carries me through, other people aren't exactly like me. And so I think the value of this activity of having and knowing a mission statement and being able to say it and explain what it looks like, and also core values help you, to begin. I don't think you can talk about goals without thinking of those things first. Otherwise, your goals become mediocre. And I use that word in terms of sometimes I have a whole list of things to do today, and my goal is just get those checked off. And I think that there's some value in task completion, but at the same time, there's more value if we feel like we're growing toward those things that are of highest importance to our business. And I think you can see, because my next question would be, do you have a mission statement for your own life? Do you have a mission statement for your life outside of work? Have you thought about what your core values are in life and outside of work? Because the whole goal setting thing doesn't separate very well. We're here connected because we're part of the chamber and we're talking about business, but at the same time, it interconnects with our lives outside of our work lives. And I think that's important to see that. And so my question for you, just to be thinking about, is what does a mission statement and a set of core values look like for you at your place of work? And then what would that look like for you outside of work? And I hope we have the bicycle wheels turning, because I know you're thinking, okay, whenever we're done at 9:29, I've got all these things to do at work today. And I know that mission and core values take some time, take some thoughtful, intentional time. I'm suggesting it's worth it. I'm suggesting if you take some intentional time to do this with your workplace and do this with your life place, it'll be like climbing on the bicycle. It'll make all the things on your to-do list much more aligned and of value to making a difference in what you want and how you want to get there. So excuse me. So that's the thought number one. Your goals need to come from the place of highest importance. And if you don't take the intentional time to figure out what that highest importance is, your goals will just be taken over by your to-do list. That's human nature and how that works. And so secondly, your goals need to focus around applying your energy to what you can control. And this is maybe the biggest, longest point I want to make here, because there are a lot of pieces to this. And I think about this all the time, probably because I was a literature teacher. And so I've got a little philosophy background in me. But I think all human beings have a desire to have control over their environment. We find comfort in being able to have some control over things. And my point of this section here is going to be, what we realize is we actually have very little control over most things in the world. And so let me start with Malcolm Gladwell. I love Malcolm Gladwell, and you may have read some of his. But Malcolm Gladwell is a scientist about excellence, and perhaps his most famous theory, discovery, premise is that to become truly excellent at anything, you need to devote at least 10,000 intentional hours to growing in that area. 10,000 hours of applied practice to become excellent in the area that you want to become excellent. And I've thought about that a lot, and I'm certainly not, he did his studies and his research and scientific data on that. I'm certainly not questioning whether or not that's true. But where I struggle is when I look at that, I think 10,000 hours, that means that if you went to work today and you had a really good day, when you're on your way home, you can be thinking, okay, only 9,992 hours until I'm excellent at this. And for me, that's overwhelming. So thank you to Malcolm Gladwell for giving me the big picture. I want to know what to do today. I want to break it down to what I can do today. And I'm suggesting that's a huge step forward in your goals. Thank you, Richard Bach. We have big dreams, and I want us to have big dreams, but I want us to take what we can do and break it down as to what we can do today. And what can I do today that I have control over? I'm going to suggest these are the three main areas for our goals. I do have control over my actions. I have control over my reactions, and I have control over my attitude. And so I've got a big dream in my company, and we want to grow and expand and serve. But I've got to take that and walk it way back down to, what do I do today? What do my coworkers do today? What do my employees do today? In these three areas, that it's great to have product and achievement goals, but I think what's more important is to have process goals. What am I going to do today in the process to make that happen? Cami can put music on the Zoom calls now, and really her goal is, I want to make the Zoom experience more welcoming to everyone. But what's one thing I can do today? One thing I can do today is learn how to put music on there so we don't have the discomfort time. And that's process, and that's a goal, and that's a win. And as I look at that, I look about, okay, I can control my actions and my reactions and my attitude. And I think, ooh, wow. Because sometimes I'm not really pleased with my actions. Sometimes I'm really not pleased with my reactions because I don't have a chance to plan it out. And sometimes I'm not pleased with my attitude. Well, there you go. That's why we have goals. We set goals toward those things. We set goals toward moving in a direction in that process. One of the things I'm working toward is becoming more patient. And what I've learned is that my immediate reaction to impatient settings is to be impatient rather than patient. Okay, so that's my goal. So I've got to welcome those opportunities to do that. And those are things that I can control. I can control my actions, reactions, and my attitude. I think it's typical to set goals like this. When I was a coach one year in the summer, I was looking at one of our best runners, and I said to him, I said, Jared, what's your goal for the season? And Jared said, I want to beat Mark Huffman. And Mark Huffman was a really good runner from a school near us. And he said, that is my goal for the season, to beat Mark Huffman. And I said, well, trying to make a point, I said, well, you know, Jared, I think you can achieve that goal, especially if Mark Huffman gets sick. Or if Mark Huffman gets injured, then you know you can achieve your goal. Or what if Mark Huffman quits running? Then you have achieved your goal. And so, for pull the sarcasm out of there and get to the lesson, but the lesson was that Jared was setting a goal that was based more than 50% on someone else, on something that he had absolutely no control over. And I think we do that all the time. I think we're encouraged to be such comparative people, comparing ourselves to others, comparing ourselves to other workplaces, comparing ourselves to our coworkers. And what we realize is we've got a lot of goals set that we have no control over, that somebody else controls even more. And so if we had time, if we had 3 hours this morning, it would be interesting to make a list. What are the things at work that you can and can't control? And put your 2 columns there and make a list. And I think what you may discover is we want to control so much, but actually we control so little. If you think about it, do we control our customers? Do we control our clients, their choices or their behavior? You know, really, no, we don't control those things. We'd like to influence those. We'd like to serve those. We'd like to lead people to make the best choices, but we still can't control those choices. Do we control our employees? Do we control our coworkers? You know, I think when you break it down, the answer is no. And so how can we focus on what we do control? What can we control in the process? Here's an example. I was working with a leader of a medical office, and he said to me, he said, I've got the best employees. I mean, they are terrific. And he said, my number one goal is I want to keep them. I want to retain my employees. They could go other places. I want to keep them working here. And so we backed up to, okay, how do you control that? Do you control whether or not they stay at your workplace? And the answer was, no, actually, I don't control that. I said, what do you control? He said, well, I guess I could control whether or not I do my best to make the workplace someplace they want to work. And I said, what would make somebody want to work here? And he said, well, I know why I want to work here. I want to make money. He said, and so, you know, I guess I could make sure they're getting paid a really fair amount of money. And I said, well, is that what they want? And does money control those decisions? And again, he backed up and he said, I don't know if it does. And so we backed up to this point of surveying his employees' needs. What do they really want from the workplace? And what do they want from him as the leader of the workplace? And he was surprised, like the other person I talked about, because they didn't necessarily want the same things that he wanted. They really wanted, most of all, recognition, to be told that they were doing a good job when they did a good job, and to be recognized for that. And yes, everybody likes to earn money, but they just liked daily recognition that what they were doing was important to the mission of the office. And that was an eye-opener for him. And can he control whether or not they stay? No, but can he control whether or not he recognizes when they do excellent things? And the answer is yes. And so he took what he wanted as a big goal, as a big dream, employee retention, and broke it down to, these are the things that I can do specifically. And then I have to let go of the control of that. And I hope that means that they will stay. And so I think that's one example of controlling what you can control. I was talking to a group of of business leaders about leadership. And I told a story about, about a business that my family has frequented in northern Michigan. It's called Cherry Republic, and Michigan is like the cherry capital of the world. And this business sells everything that's cherry related, from cherry salsa to cherry wine to dark chocolate covered cherries, all these things. But my point of telling about that business is that they have the most truly interested employees that I've ever known. Not kind of like the fake, hey, how you doing? Have a nice day, pretend to be interested, but truly engaging with every single customer. And as I told that story to this group of leaders of their businesses, one of the leaders came up to me and she said, I want our business to be the kind where you can tell that story about us someday. I want us to be known for customer service. I want us to be an example for others. And so we started back with, how do we set goals that you can control? Can you control whether or not your customers have a happy experience? Let me ask it differently. Can you control whether or not your customers and clients feel happy about having visited? And you really can't, because you can't control their feelings and emotions. You've got to back up to the process. What are the things that make people happy? What are the things that make people satisfied, that make people feel valued? And how do I set process goals? What can I do to try to put those things in place? And just really quickly, one of the things that she did was, she said, well, one of the things I think is important is that people recognize you and call you by name. And so they set a goal, because of course they're also a medical facility, but they have a list of appointments. They know who's going to walk through their door next. And their goal is to greet every person that comes in by name within the first 3 seconds that they're in the door. And so that becomes a process goal. That becomes a goal you can control. You can't control whether or not that makes someone feel satisfied or happy, but you can control whether or not you've done the steps to make that happen. And I think that's really an important part of this. And think about, what does that look like in your workplace? What are the things you can control, and what are the things you can't control? And then how do you set a list of goals that will help you get to the place that you want to get? I always smile at myself on this, because this was a hard realization for me. My wife, Amy, and I have 5 kids. And at some point, I've had to realize as a dad, I can't control their behaviors and decisions. Ooh, do I want to sometimes? And it wouldn't be healthy if I could control their behaviors and decisions. But I have to focus on what I can control. And so about a year ago, we were talking. I said, I wish our family was closer. We're all distanced. We're all over the country. And COVID hasn't made it any easier. COVID has actually been a great lesson in the terms of realizing what you can and can't control. It's made us realize there are a lot of things we can't control, which makes me want to focus on what I can control. And so I said, I want our family to feel closer, but I can't control that. All I can control are my actions and reactions. And so I realized the best I could do was help us set up a family group that we try to text periodically in. And I realized that I can't control which of the 5 kids send text messages in this. I can only control what I do. And so my job, what I can control, is to try to text 3 times a week, to try to throw in a few dad jokes that might amuse them along the way. But I have to recognize the difference as I set my goals between what I can and can't control. Setting a goal to make our family feel closer has to break down to specific goals and process that I can control. So please think about that. What does that look like at your workplace in terms of what you can and can't control? Think for a second about how many goals have been set in a lot of places based on things that people can't control. And how do you take those goals back to being, number one, of value, of highest importance, and be things that actually you can control? maybe take a deep breath about, okay, and then what things, what does this look like in my life outside of work? What can I and can't I control? How can I let go of the things that I can't control and focus my goal setting, my personal growth on what I can control? So big section there, but I think it's really important when you kind of sort out what you can have some control over. And then the third piece is, on your way to the big dreams, celebrate the small wins. So recognize the little pieces of that. Every single step forward is a step of growth. I think growth is only sustainable in small steps. It's nice to have the big leaps of things that happen. It's really hard to sustain those. So it's about recognizing small wins on your goals. It's about, I'm back to Cami playing her music. So she's achieved that goal, and it's about Bob recognizing that by buying her a Diet Coke at some point today is a thank you for that, but recognizing the steps that we take along the way to that and allowing ourselves that, because that becomes sustainable and that becomes motivating. For example, I worked with a group of people, and the leader's name was Brad. And one of the things he said to me is, he says that we just feel so much stress in our workplace. Can you do some work with us to help us manage stress? And so I did a workshop with them on stress management. And at the end of it all, we had like 5 main points to work on to try to manage the stress, not only at work, but in our lives. And I printed those out, and wife got the laminator, and we laminated them. So they had a little card they could carry in their wallet if they wanted to about that. And a little while later, I got a call from Brad, and he said, I just got to tell you this. I keep that laminated piece on my desk, or I keep it on my wall, but I got it out of my desk because I had an employee I was really struggling with. And I couldn't figure out why she wasn't doing what I wanted her to do. And I couldn't figure out how she chose the decisions that she chose. He said, but I took that laminated card and I kind of read through it, and I realized, okay, I can't control her. All I can do is control my own actions and reactions. And he said, and so what I did was, I took a deep breath because I could control that. I thought about, have I been a very clear communicator? Does she know exactly what I want? And then I listened to her and controlled my reaction to try to find out where she was coming from. And he said, and when that was over, he said, I stopped by Dairy Queen and I got a milkshake, because it was a big jump for me to let go of the stress of that and actually deal with that. And so I think that's absolutely a small win. This same guy, Brad, maybe a couple months after that, texted me a picture, and it was a picture of him holding up this stress management card, and in the background he was in a doctor's office, and his son was getting a cast on his arm. And I think that's another small win, because if you have to reward yourself for the process of dealing with stress, whether it occurs in the workplace or occurs out of that. And sometimes it's learning to recognize that. It's feeling the gratitude for the process and the progress. Working with a gentleman named Kent, and he does a lot of primary caregiving for his young son, Josh. Josh is 4 years old. And Kent felt a lot of stress and frustration because he's got this whole list of things he needs to do, including working from home. But he's also taking care of a 4-year-old. And he said, I play with him, and then I go do my work, and I just feel stressed I'm not getting it done, including cleaning and all, washing the dishes and doing some cooking. And so we talked a little bit about, well, what if you include Josh rather than saying those two things as separate, what if you include him in that process? What if you let Josh help you clean the bathroom? And he was appalled by that. He said, it'll still be messy. It won't be perfect. And so we kind of had to let go of the big dream and go back to the small steps. And I tell you that because I got an email, 2 or 3 months after we started that process. And he said, Rick, I want to tell you this. This morning I woke up early and I knew I had some things to do. So the first thing I did was I started cleaning the bathroom. And then my son Josh woke up and he wandered in and he saw me cleaning the bathroom. And he started to cry. And I said, Josh, why are you crying? What's wrong? And he said, I wanted to clean the bathroom with you. And that's a small win when you've taken tasks and turned them into learning experiences. And you really need to stop and celebrate those things. I'm back to the phrase we started earlier with, I'm too busy. I think sometimes we feel like we're too busy to set goals, we feel like we're too busy to celebrate the small steps along the way. So as you think about where we've come from, it's about that you might not read in 50,000 other books, it's about setting goals that come from your mission and your values, ones that are truly important to you. It's about setting goals of process you can actually control, that you've got control of what you can do. And then it's about celebrating the progress along the way. And I think if those three pieces become a part of your goal setting process or the foundation for your goal setting process, you're going to feel really, really good about the things that you can do. You're going to get on the bicycle and you're going to ride really fast. Let me close this with two final thoughts, and then certainly open to questions or thoughts or comments, reactions that you have. But in terms of goal setting, the picture on the left is from those of us of a different generation, but that's an athlete named Al Order. And Al Order is probably one of the greatest Olympians in the history of the United States. He won the discus at 4 successive Olympics. He won in 1956, 60, 64, and 68 at that time. And for many years, he was the only athlete to win the same event 4 times in a row, which means he was the best in the world for 16 years. And I was at a conference one time, and Al Order was scheduled to be the keynote speaker. And I just happened to be standing in a certain room, and the conference director came in and looked super stressed. And I asked him if he was okay. And he said, I just have about 15 things that came up to do here. And he said, and I'm supposed to be picking up Al Order at the airport. And I don't know how I'm going to do that. And my eyes got about that big. And I couldn't say fast enough, I'll pick him up at the airport. And that's how I happened to get one of the greatest Olympians in U.S. history in my car alone for 30 minutes as we drove back from the airport. And as you might expect, I just peppered him with questions the whole time. He probably wanted to rest from the flight. I just asked him all kinds of questions. But here's a story that he told me. There are 2 pieces to this that I want to share with you as we talk about goals. One is that he came from a family and a school that was fairly poor, and they not only didn't have a weightlifting room, they didn't have any weights to lift. And as an Olympic thrower, strength is a big part of that. And I said, well, what did you do? And he said, well, actually, my dad was a plumber. And so we took some leftover pieces of PVC pipe, and we took some empty Clorox bleach bottles, and we filled them with cement, and we put one end of the PVC pipe in one end, and it solidified, and the other end in the other Clorox bottle of cement. He said, and all of a sudden I had a PVC pipe with 2 bottles of cement on each end. And he said, that's what I lifted. I lifted in our garage. We made these weights out of leftover plumbing supplies. And I thought that was really, really powerful for this multi-world champion to talk about that. And my point of that is this, that when you have goals that are valuable, they're really important about where you come from, and that you will find a way to control the process. That Al Order didn't just think, okay, I can't lift and get stronger because my school isn't wealthy enough to have a weight room. He just found a way to make that happen. And I like that phrase, that goal-oriented people find a way to do things. When you get on that bike, it not only makes you cover more ground, but it makes you able to do things, to find ways to do things, because your goals are really coming from a place of importance. The second thing that Al Order said that I don't have on the slide, but I just thought of, he said to me, what a lot of people don't realize is that goals that take a long time to achieve are much more satisfying than goals that take a short time to achieve. He said, I'm all in favor of goals that take you a long time and a lot of work to get there because it's much more satisfying. The other part that I want to share with you is this, sometimes you think about your big dream and it's mountainous. It's just mountainous. How do I do this? Well, come back to what we talked about every day and what you can control. I'm going to climb that mountain. That's my dream. But really, some days you just have to remember, tie your shoes and take one step. Today, I'm just going to tie my shoes and I'm going to take one step. I'm going to think of one way in which I can move forward, and then I'm going to celebrate with that. What do those things look like in your workplace? Goal-oriented people who find a way, and on days that the mountain seems too high, you just take one step. And what does that look like in your world outside of work, in the rest of your life, and how do those tie together? I can't thank you enough for your time this morning. I know everybody is running down the sidewalk pushing that bike right now, and you have a million other things to do, but you've taken the first step toward being intentional and thoughtful, and you've questioned your goals in your workplace and also your life and how that connects. You've thought about how to come from a place of highest importance, and then what can I control? And then doggone it, it's okay to celebrate. It's okay to feel good about those things. And so I thank you again. Your time is a gift. And I thank you for getting to share that. And so I'm sending it back to Cammie. Yeah, in case there are any questions or thoughts or comments.
Rick, I just want to, oh, sorry, Cammie.
I was just going to say, does anybody have any questions? So go ahead.
No, I don't have a question, but I want to thank you for your time this morning. And it was a great reminder of one of the things I'm pulling from this is to not set a goal compared to somebody else. Like that was a huge thing for me, is because I'm very competitive, for those of you who don't know. And so, so it was really great to remind myself to stop and what can I do? What can I control to set that goal, and taking those small steps that help us get up that mountain. So just thank you for that. And that quick reminder, I really appreciated it.
And thank you for sharing that, Chrissy, because I think the world tends to want to make us compare to one another. And so sometimes we have to shut out the world around us to get to where we want to go.
Rick, do you have any specific thoughts on how much more or less of a challenge this is for an individual entrepreneur as opposed to somebody who's part of a team?
Yeah, and I've got to give you my limited background because my father was an educator. I spent 40 years in education, so I'd never stepped into the entrepreneurial world until I was 62 years old. And so the only experience I have is from my entrepreneurial quest, which is, as an individual. I don't have any employees, it's just me. And I think individually for me, I think the challenge is to look at the mountain. What the analogy I'm working on right now is an elephant. I think there's a famous phrase where it says, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. Yeah. And so that's where I remind myself of that every night. And I've got a gratitude journal I keep, and I'm writing that because as an individual entrepreneur, sometimes the big picture is too broad for me. And so I'm trying to prioritize what can I do the most with these first goals. And I've got to let some of that go to the side. So that's really my background. So I think the challenge for me is not having 50 goals, is realizing how to prioritize what are the most important ones and work from there. How can I eat this thing one bite at a time?
I have a comment, I guess, by way of some feedback. We don't always get to know when we've impacted someone positively. So at the risk of getting too personal, I was just texting with my son, Gabriel Watson, who remembers you. And he actually actually is an English teacher now at the high school level, and he
I am
also,
not surprised.
you made a real difference there.
Thank
And
you.
his response was, I said, do you remember him? And he said, yeah, I liked him. So there's your feedback.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. As we think about personal mission statements, that was funny for me because I was a teacher for 4 decades. And when you're a teacher, gosh, your mission is built in. Every single day, you've got a chance to make a difference in people's lives. It's what you get to do. Then all of a sudden I was retired. And it was like, how do I keep that same mission? How do I find a way to make a difference? And so this is what I'm working on to try to do that thing. So thank you for sharing that. Tell them I said hi.
Did you have something? Oh, okay. Okay, Jan, I think to your point, I think it's good for a team to have their own individual goals and then also team goals. And so you can kind of around the mission statement, help people achieve their personal goals as well as, coming together as a team and fulfilling those team goals.
It's a great thought.
Rick, that was awesome as usual. It's always, every time I talk to you, I end up going back to my office and just sitting for an hour and just thinking, but.
Don't tell
It does-
Cindy
it
that.
makes
If
some
Cindy has other
interesting
things for you to do.
She's already off the call, we're fine. Yeah. But it is interesting to walk that line between stress of this is where I want to perform. And it's hard sometimes for me to remember if I get up, come in here every day and do the absolute best that I can and control what I can, the success will follow.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes you just feel like I want a shortcut and get to the big mountain, but it was a great reminder just to stay, focused on what you can do and take care of yourself. And as long as you're serving and trying to get better, then it should, in the end of days, all work out.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts? No? All right. Well, I did. Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to go work on my core values this week.
Well, and I have a 17-year-old daughter, and I was never, growing up, goals weren't something that we talked about. And I'll have to give a shout out to Central Middle School because she was on the adventure team and they really focused on goal setting. And every month she has a calendar in her room and she marks everything off, and down the side she has goals.
Wow.
And that just impresses me so much because, I'm 47 and I don't have any goals. So
You have your music goal. Yes.
I got my music goal today. But yeah, so, all right. Well, thanks everybody.